Now Rehoboam takes over the kingdom. This chapter 10 through chapter 12 could have been summarized, and then we will leave this line by the next 3 minutes. But for the details, we wanted to go through it and state the very important things that will help us to understand the whole concept of the breaking away of the 10 against the 2 tribes. It was only by stupidity of Rehoboam. If he had acted wisely, he would have preserved the 12 tribes. And so sometimes we needed wisdom in order for us to preserve unity. Let us now turn into chapter 10, and then the verse is the verse number 1. And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for to Shechem were all the Israel come to make him king. And it came to pass when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who was in Egypt, whither he had fled from the presence of Solomon the king, heard it, that Jeroboam returned out of Egypt. If you recall this Jeroboam, he led the insurrection, a coup that he had wanted to overthrow Solomon when you read the book in Kings. So his life became wanted, and he fled to Egypt until the death of Solomon. So now he is returned and has heard that his son Rehoboam has occupied the seat. Let's see what really transpired. And they sent, verse number 3, and they sent and called him. So Jeroboam and all Israel came and spake to Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore is thou somewhat the grievous servitude of thy father, and his heavy yoke that he put upon us, and we will serve thee. I know that taxes are very, very hard for anyone to think about when taxes are raised in every nation. Where I live in Chicago, taxes are killing and people are running away like there is no tomorrow. Why? Wherever taxes are raised, the people run from the place. And so when Solomon was building the temples and building palaces, he has caused the nation to really sweat and toil to bring out taxes. Now, I don't think that Rehoboam is going to build anything again because it has now been built. So, Jeroboam, who fled through an insurrection to Egypt, became the spokesman and came to Jeroboam and came to Rehoboam and asked for, this is what we are going to do. We are going to serve you continually if the condition of the taxes is lifted out from us. That means taxes is nothing that we can talk about. If a politician comes on, so I'm going to lift up or reduce your taxes, it makes people even to think very wise. But in most of the time, they go and increase the debt ceiling so that we will continue to pay and pay and pay, that there's no kind of insight. They find a way of taking taxes, that $20 here, $30 here, $40 there, just like you will live in I lived in Ohio. There was nothing like living in a community or a place that you pay tax. You pay tax on your sticker. Put a sticker on your windscreen. What is that? That if I move there and I go live in a different kind of community, I have to pay another taxes over, and you have the same Illinois divided into different kind of sections. $20 here, $30 here, and we have people who will be going around 6:30 p.m. to come and write taxes and tell you that you never display any sticker in front of you. I never knew anything of that nature when I was living in Ohio. But right here, taxes, it's on the increase. And we don't know what they are doing. And still, Illinois is in the red. Now, let's move on to the verse number 5. And he said unto them, Come again unto me after 3 days. And the people departed. Here is Rehoboam. They've consulted him that this is what we are going to do. If you are able to help us to bring the taxes down, we're going to serve you. And so he told the people, Go. And then you will hear my response in 3 days. What they asked was really a fair thing. Rehoboam would have had an opportunity to look at the indebtedness and decide what was the wise thing to do. The wise thing would have been to reduce taxes. Today, every day, Texas is getting full. People who empty themselves over here run to Texas. Texas is getting out. Now he says that the best is in the West. Yes, you go to the West, and then you find out that people are living in luxury, not like in Illinois. Verse number 6 through 8. And King Rehoboam took counsel with the old men, and has stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, saying, What counsel give me to return answer to these people? And they spake unto him, saying, If thou be kind to these people, and please them, and speak good words to them, they will be thy servant forever. But he forsook the counsel which the old man gave him, and took counsel with a young man, what were brought up with him, that stood before him. You remember when Moses was given responsibility to Joshua, he was going to lay his hand and take up his mantle and put on Joshua, the young man. He brought Caleb also aside. Why? The young man needs the counsel of the old man. You cannot cross Jordan without the counsel of the old man standing with you. So Moses gave up a symbol that the young man listened to the old man. What do we do now? All the old men, their ears are past, the computer age is past, so they have no sense. That's what the young generation think, that I know what I can do. So when you're talking to even your little child that you are schooling them and going to a grad school, you have graduated, I think 1991 or 1978, your son calls you an old and archaic, thinking that he is now in college and your issues are not concerned to him anymore. Rehoboam definitely showed poor judgment. He should have followed the wisdom of the older men who had been counselors during the reign of Solomon. They knew the situation. Unfortunately, he turned to the young men. Look, this man is so stupid. Your father gave you the throne, and so you did not labor. You only came in and filled up the throne, and there is a council before you came in. Before you were even born, these counselors have been with your father. And now that your father is gone, you should have continued with them in order for you to be unsafe. Because if they were not good, your father would have even instructed you to do away with them. Verse number 10 and 11. And the young men that were brought up with him spake unto him, saying, Thou answer the people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made yoke heavy, but make thou it somewhat lighter for us. Thou shalt say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. For whereas my father put a heavy yoke upon you, I will put more to your yoke. My father chastised with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. The young man advised, Don't ease up. We want this picnic to continue. All of us have public jobs, and those of us who are not eating out of the public through would like to have a very great in that through. Don't reduce the taxes. Increase them. This was probably the most foolish thing that a young man, Rehoboam, could have done. The older man conceded that Solomon did overtax the people. They advised that it was time to stop the building program. It was time to put a lid on all the government spending. The time had come to reduce taxes. By the way, have you ever heard of any government which has reduced taxes? Our politicians go into office saying they will reduce taxes. I think in our lifetime we have seen it as the debt continues to increase. No reduction, except of recently that there have been some kind of move that it's been almost being seen. Yet the burden is still in Illinois here. Verse 12 through 14. So Rehoboam and all the people came to Rehoboam, and so Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam on the third day, as the king bade, saying, Come again to me on the third day. And the king answered them roughly. And King Rehoboam forsook the counsel of the old men, and answered them after the advice of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add thereto. My father chastised with whip, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Rehoboam delivers verbatim to the people the heartless and the insensitive judgment of the young man. Now verse number 15. So the king hearkened unto the people, for the cause was of God, that the Lord might perform his word, which he spake by the hand of Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. The prophecy to which this refers is given in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 9 to 39. And when all Israel saw that the king would not hearken unto them, the people answered the king, saying, What portion have we in David? And we have none inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to your tent, O Israel. And now David, see to thine own house. So all Israel went to their tents. You see, Israel refers to the 10 tribes. Judah refers to the 2 tribes. And they are the Judah and then the Benjamites. However, the name Israel sometimes refers to the southern kingdom also because God regards them as one people, regardless of their breakaway. God sometimes have to refer Israel to, so there is no division on the side of God, even though they don't want to serve in that kind of reign. Let's move on. But as the children of Israel that dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. The king Rehoboam sent Hadoram, that was over the tribute, and the children of Israel stoned him with stones, that he died. But the king Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariots to flee to Jerusalem. And Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day. So now you can see that the people are angry. Taxes are not easily being swallowed. Nobody wanted to see our children's children to be in debt when we are gone. So taxes are not easy pill to swallow. King Rehoboam sent a tax gatherer to gather taxes, and the people stoned him to death. Rehoboam just hadn't realized how incensed these people were. So Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day, means up to the time of 2 Chronicles was written. Now let's see in the chapter 11, early days of Rehoboam's reign. When Rehoboam goes back to Jerusalem, he finds that his kingdom was really being cut down by quite a bit. Then he does another foolish thing. Let's see what he did. Verse 1. And when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he gathered of the house of Judah and Benjamin 180,000 chosen men, which were warriors, to fight against Israel, that he might bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam. First, Rehoboam lost part of the kingdom by his own folly. Now he is doing another foolish thing, but attempting to internal warfare. He wants a civil war in Israel. That's what our predicament in Africa. The breakaway always brings up coup and coup d'etat. Republic of Congo has never known anything so sweet. Sudan had never known anything so sweet. Can name in Africa, in Kenya, they were having two kings, two presidents, one in the south and one in the north. It's everywhere in Africa. We would never come to that rest. And foolish things was what Rehoboam was trying to fight his own brothers. But the word of the Lord came to Shammah, the man of God, saying, Spake unto Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all Israel in Judah and Benjamin, saying, Thou sayest the Lord, ye shall not go up, not fight against your brethren. Return every man to his house. For this thing is done of me. And they obeyed the word of the Lord, and returned from going against Jeroboam. You see, if Jeroboam had said the scripture, he would have known that 2 Kings chapter 11 was revealing exactly what was going to happen. And so you should have even consulted the prophets within the time. He took his own initiation that this is it. I don't need God. I am the king. And we can just make it up all day. Sometimes, you see, we have to take a break. It doesn't matter whether we've been beaten by some kind of event. The next move that we are going to do without Christ will make us even sink lower. But here, no matter what, we don't take any decision without consulting God. Now let's move on. Let's move on to the next level. So you see, here is Rehoboam. Now Rehoboam turns his attention to the building of fortification to protect himself from the northern kingdom which had been part of the kingdom of David and Solomon. It's now lost to him and becomes his enemy because of his very foolish decision to listen to young men rather than the wise counselors of his father. Verse number 13. Verse number 13. Now let me read the verse number 11 and 12, then 13. And he fortified a stronghold, and put captains in them, and stores of victual, and of oil and wine. And in every several city he put shields and spears, and made them exceedingly strong, having Judah and Benjamin on his side. And the priest and the Levite that were in all Israel restored to him out of all their coast. So you remember that the Levite had been given certain cities throughout Israel, but that they had no territory as a tribe, such as the other tribes had been given. Now the Levites leave all their cities in the northern kingdom, and all the priests and the Levites moved south to Judah and Jerusalem. Now verse 14 and then verse 15. For the Levites left their suburbs and their possessions and came to Judah and Jerusalem. For Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest's office unto the Lord. You see, there is no play school. They were thinking that this man who is leading the rebellion is going to put them somewhere good. It's now stopped everything about God. Jeroboam became the leader of the northern state, and he doesn't want to see anything with God. So he expelled all the Levites to go, and the Levites have to leave within some hours, to leave and leave all their properties. And he ordained him priest for the high priest and for the devils, demons, and for the cows which he had made. So he made a carving image, and then he ordained a priest that would take care, the fetish priest that would take care. All the priests and the Levites who lived in this northern kingdom moved south so that they could continue to serve at the temple. Then Jeroboam instituted demon worship. The record in Kings gives us more details. If these people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of these people turn again unto the Lord, even unto Rehoboam the king. Why? Because the temple was in the south. And so he felt that if I leave my people to go down and serve, even though they are not under them, to go and worship, it will be a kind of thing. So he made image that they could worship, so that instead of going into the temple, they would just block them and kind of, these have been what we see in the churches. We find every means to stop people from going to different places to gain understanding. So many churches or denominations, let me use the word denomination, that's what we do. We just burden people with programs. We record them. We know that what we are giving them is not enough. We are not teaching them what should make them stay confident in the Lord. And yet we are finding means of stopping the leakage in our mainstream churches. So we devise means of saying something. Listen to what another pastor said. If we are institute, we know that the people's heart love dead bodies and dead people. Let us institute something that will make us to see that we will be going to the graveside and be praying for their loved ones, and we will set up a day that we will set up this thing and we make it a festival, that everybody will bring his dead person and we will be able to pray for them or visit some cemeteries. All of a sudden, the church becomes so full again because people love dead bodies and love dead relatives more than the living. And so when you institute something that will cause for people to go to the cemetery and to pray and to lay wreaths, we think that we are serving God through our ancestors, and sometimes we have connection to the dead. So when churches are being done, they only deceive people by telling you that when you die, we will never bring you to the church premises. So when you go to a church and the church has no church building, you begin to think that if I die, how is my funeral going to be organized? You will be compelled to go into these dead churches. You don't care because you want to see people processing to your funeral. And if you are living in a classroom having a worship, how can that be? And so these have been the tactics of the mainstream churches to sweep out. I remember when I was in Methodist, when we started this charismatic movement, Methodists didn't like anything like clapping of the hands. I remember it. In far back to 72, 73, 74, no Methodist claps their hands. And we were clapping our hands. We go into the church and we were clapping our hands and we danced to the glory of God. So they started banning us that we shouldn't do that, we shouldn't do that. And when they could not stop us, they saw us leaving and going to different places to serve the Lord. Do you know what the Methodists constituted to do? They said, let us now bring drums and bring something into the church so that the people will not go again. You see, there is something wrong. Something is not adding up. But they will never find the faults. They are only trying to practice and appease the people. So when they brought in back, and then people who have left Methodist long ago started coming back and they were dancing in the church. Now today, Methodist is dancing to the tune. Methodists used to not to take tithes and offering. They used to only say pledges. John Wesley never believed in tithes. But when they saw that the people in different churches, the ministers were becoming flamboyant and they were getting better things, Methodists instituted tithes. And now Methodists, every day they are chasing people. They know how to take money with tithes. You see, people don't know what they believe. And here is a typical example. Jeroboam was also instituting something that has a grievous remark over the people. Let's move on. So they strengthened the kingdom of Judah and made Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, strong. 3 years and for 3 years they walked in the way of David and Solomon. Now let's move on to 21 and 23, 21 to 33. Now, and Rehoboam loved Maachah, the daughter of Absalom, above all his wives and his concubines. He took 18 wives and 80 concubines, and begat 28 sons and 80 daughters. And Rehoboam made Abijah, the son of Maachah, the chief, to be the ruler among his brethren, for he thought he make him king. And he dwelt wisely and despised of all his children throughout all the countries of Judah and Benjamin unto every fenced city, and he gave them virtually in abundance, and he desired many wives. This is an old phenomenon. You see, the trouble is not about what comes out of the Bible makes that God has approved of it. No, God never approved of multiple wives. When Abraham took Keturah, the trouble that Abraham left is a century one. It is living up to now. Palestinians and then the Arab nations will never love Israel. Keturah, because of Keturah. And so you saw that when you take up more wives, you bring trouble. This man followed the suit of his father. He took many wives and many concubines, and he desired, the Bible says that he desired to have more wives. Because the record of many wives appears in the Bible, a great many folks assume that God approves of polygamy. No, God records this to let us know that he does not approve of it. This man Rehoboam did wrong by not listening to the counsel of Solomon, but wrong in trying to start a civil war. He was wrong in having many wives. He is recorded because it is history. It is what he did. It is one of them many things that God, things which God judged him. God, this where we are reading is God's point of saying things. And so when he brings it up, doesn't mean that he has approved it, but he's bringing up a judgment unto him. Now let's move on to chapter 12. In the life of Rehoboam, one sin led to another. Now we see that he leads his people in apostasy. What a fallen hero. Someone that you come into throne and you lead it. That's one thing I've always prayed. That God, don't let my aim bring up anything that will lead the church into apostasy. Let it be in that way. When I have any thought of apostasy or leading the people out, just take my life, and it will be better for me to die in that estate than to lead the church into apostasy. Verse 1. And it came to pass when Rehoboam had established the kingdom and had strengthened himself, he forsook the law of the Lord, and all Israel with him. You see, God did not approve of Rehoboam's conduct. People read the things this man did in the Old Testament, and they say, look what they did, and they got by with it. That is often said about Abraham when he took Hagar and had the boy Ishmael. Friends, he didn't get by with it. Do you know who is the big problem in the Middle East today? The sons of Abraham, the Israelites and the Arabs. Who is the Arab? Well, I had an Arab guide take me down to the city of Jericho. I wanted someone who knew about the place. And this was the brilliant fellow who had worked with so many good and behaved men of God. He was very helpful to me. He was talking about the land, and I made the statement that God had given it to Abraham and to his offspring. This Arab smiled and looked at me and said, I am as much a son of Abraham as any Jew who is alive today. And he was right. He could trace his ancestry right back to Ishmael. He boasted of the fact that he was an Ishmaelite, a son of Abraham. Did God approve when Abraham took Hagar, God records it as history. Then he lets you see the result. It certainly has never been the blessing. In fact, it has been the thorn in the flesh throughout the centuries. Now God recalls the apostasy of Jeroboam. Also, he recalls the forsaking of the law by Rehoboam and Israel. God condemns these things, but he recalls them in history. Now let's look up the invasion. Now God's judgment fall upon Rehoboam. For the first time, he opens up that the southern kingdom to the invasion of major nation. You see, Rehoboam had forsaken the word of the Lord. He had led his people in apostasy. When he did this, God did something he had not done before. Previous to this, God had put a wall around his people, and the great nation of that day were not permitted to invade their territory. You remember when Solomon was living, nobody invaded the territory. And it came to pass that in the 5th year of Rehoboam, Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem because they had transgressed against the Lord with 1,200 chariots and 70,000 horsemen, and the people were without number that came with him out of Egypt, the Lubim, and then the Sukkim, and then the Ethiopians. First, the Shishak, king of Egypt, came up and carried away great booty. He locked away the great deal of the gold that was the wealth that David left in that temple building. So Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem and took away the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house. He took all. He carried away also the shield of the gold, and then to which Solomon had made, instead of which King Rehoboam made shields of brass and committed them to the hands of the chief of the guard that kept the entrance of the king's house. And when the king entered into the house of the Lord, the guard came and fetched them and brought them again unto the guard's chamber. You see, these you recall are the great shields of gold that David brought and then Solomon placed in the temple. After these had been captured as booty, Rehoboam substitute sometimes something inferior. No longer do they have shields of gold, and now they have shields of brass. The judgment of God is upon them because of their sin. This is a humble experience for Rehoboam. He had been brought up in the affluence of reign of Solomon and had experienced the blessing that had come. He had known nothing but wealth and luxury and expected to go on forever. He began to realize there may be an end of glory in the kingdom of Solomon. Beloved, one thing I want you to pick out from here. When time changes, you have to mellow. I've seen a lot of people, when they lose their house or they lose certain properties or they repossess their car, they repossess something or in some kind of debt that will make them to run away and maybe lose their house. They don't want other people to know that they have been affected. You know, God sometimes humbles us. And by humbling us, if we think that we are wiser to replace gold with brass, with time, we will see gold will be different from brass. You see, when we are going down and trimming down our cost, let us be so wise. People are still living in the years when they were having abundance. When the economy changed and their whole issues changed, some of you were living in houses with your husbands, and now what we call divorce has come. You don't accept the divorce that it's a clean thing, right? But the fact is that it's not going to be the same. You have to now cut your coat according to your size. Downsize is always not a humiliating. Downsize is something that we have to also really put it in our skills. God sometimes allows certain things to come to see how we will handle it. We don't want to downsize, but we want to remain the same as it is. He said, as for me, it's not going to happen. Over my dead body, I am still going to maintain. Praise God. If that you have that the capacity to do it. But the fact is that if you add up, it's not going to work. And then you still fight over the old things, and by the time you see you are so much in debt, and then what happens to you? Depression. Depression is nothing than believing in things that never exist. You put your confidence in things that never exist, you fall into depression. This Rehoboam could only have really resigned from whatever and asked himself what has caused this blunder. The moment they took out the gold shield, he replaced them with brass, because every glittering things might mean gold. So he replaced them without necessarily humbling himself. God wanted us to humble, so that if the situation brings us into a side where we have to humble, bow. It's not a shame to bow. It's a bowing to God. It's not a shame. But some of us take it as a shame. For instance, when a child of God gets into some sickness, and then on the line, you hear that, is there anyone who is sick, who wants the Lord to heal, that we can remember the person? Beloved, you are so much in your shape that if I say that I have this sickness, your thought is that I have bowed in shame. Beloved, sickness does not belong to us. We are the children being redeemed unto prosperity. If sickness has just humbled you, you own it up. I don't say go around and tell everybody I'm sick. But the fact is that when you are under the unction of the Holy Spirit and there is another pronunciation, it might be that you are the one that God wants to demonstrate something on. You keep your mouth shut and you will never reveal it. And you go home with the same sickness. Are you doing yourself? Look, let us learn to humble. Humble ourselves doesn't mean that when we bow to God doesn't mean that we are ashamed. So I've seen people who will die in their sickness. Rather, they will have to die in their sickness than to pronounce it so that they will pray for them. I had a very good friend, a pastor indeed. He never told me that he was having cancer. All of a sudden, I saw him. His hair was tearing off. And I always keep a bald hair, very down-cut. And he started also, I said, hey, you've joined our society. Instead of telling me that the pastor, there had been something. One day he ran up from where he was living to where I was living was far. He came to me and he said, Pastor, I want you to pray for me. How can a man of God from that structure come? I knew that there was something wrong. He never told me. And I said, oh, really? We prayed about it. And then I saw him reducing in size. Then he left Columbus and went to Canada to confide in a pastor over there, so that the pastor knew exactly what was going on. All of a sudden one day, I sat in his presence. He said, Pastor, I'm leaving. I'm going to pray on a mountain in Ghana, and I will be there for 1 month or 2 months, and I'll come back. Not knowing the doctors have now given up on him, that there is nothing they can do. And this man didn't want to die in front of his young ones. He had children that were very young. So he packed all his things. I said, why are you going with all these things I'm packing? I'm going. He went with every clothing. The moment he got to Ghana, he got sick. I didn't know that was what was going on. They said he has a stomach problem, not knowing the cancer was inside and was developing, and he died. When he died before, the thing came that he had already been pronounced. He felt that it was a shame for him to bow. It was a shame for brethren to pray for him because he wants to stay up like who he is. Beloved, I am sick. I tell you, pray for me. And that is exactly what it is. If you cannot have the confidence in the church, then I don't know what legacy you are pursuing. Jesus left the church as a legacy. You feel ashamed to talk about issue. I know that people are not good. They will carry your issue and take it all over. But not to your pastor. Not to the people that you trust and are confident in. And therefore it is. Sometimes you don't have to reveal all. You say that I'm sick. Pray for me. Pray for me. And it will be. But I tell you, this is the place. Something that you cannot do is the church. What am I talking about? We have to now resolve and changing with time. When the time brings us to be humble, we have to downsize. Means downsize. Don't go into restaurant. When you downsize, you don't eat every day in the restaurant. When you downsize, you don't just do like the way you used to do. When you downsize, you don't bring yourself to what you used to do. When you go into bankruptcy classes, they tell you that, now tell us, how many times do you go to restaurant? They give you a lesson, just means that what? You have to cut the way you eat in the restaurant and do you want a bankruptcy court or bankruptcy lesson to be able to put onto you before you be able to humble yourself? When you downsize with the time. This man Rehoboam will not look into God. Will exchange gold into brass. And that tells you brass is the meaning of judgment. He didn't know that he was running from gold, but running into brass. And he doesn't understand the brass, what it means in God's kingdom. It talks about judgment. And because he could not hold on to gold, God is going to bring judgment upon him. And he never thought that this was going to reveal what was in his heart. The judgment of God was coming upon him because he did not honor God. May God help us that we will always adapt to time and humble enough. This morning, I want us all to go before the Lord and ask God, God, Heavenly Father, help me to be more humble in every way that I do.